Welcome all. I'm Meg Mann, and I have the pleasure today of spending time with my dear friend Kevin and talking more about his upcoming book that launches, well, it's on pre-sale now, but launches officially on the 28th of March on Amazon. And we are just so excited. So as most of you may know, Kevin himself is a global nomad. And he's a coach, he's a facilitator, he's a keynote speaker, he's a choreographer, he's a skater, he's so many things. I'd spend the whole hour talking about all the wonderful accolades for Kevin. But his latest book is very, very special and unique and exciting. And it's about the idea of rethinking who we are as leaders, not just leaders in organizations, but leaders in our own lives, and about shifting to this nomadic mindset. And Kevin spent some time in Morocco and with the Berbers. He spent time in Mongolia. He spent time in Kenya with the Maasai, and learning about how that nomadic mindset has helped them over thousands and thousands of years, and what we can learn from that wisdom. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to tell us a little bit about how this whole project came about. So Kevin, yeah, what was the idea? How did this happen?
Thanks, Meg, and it's great. Thanks very much for being here with me. This has been an amazing project, and it's actually really changed my life. But how did it all start? It all started in many ways is that I was looking for a theme and for a keynote speech. And my mentor, Frederick Heron, who lives in Singapore, as I do sometimes, is one of my outposts. And he's from Sweden. And he said that if you're going to have a speech, you need to write a book. And I went, okay. And so then he asked me, well, what's this whole thing about a global nomad? I said, well, you know, that's who I am. It's my brand. I'm a global nomad these days. And that may shift in the world at times, but that's where I am today. And he said, well, I'm very curious about this word nomad. And so anyway, he does this whole inner theme thing of where he's tried to extract, you know, what was it all about? And then all of a sudden, he said, what would the book be called? And I said, it's called The Nomadic Mindset. I don't know where it came from. It just came right out of me. And he said, whoa, that's an amazing story. That's great. That's an incredible. He says, I do not know anybody that's talking on this anywhere in the world. And I speak everywhere. And he does. And so that's how it all began. And so then he said, you need to research. And I went, oh. Now the real trouble came because I don't know anything about research, how to research. And so he said, you need to research over 100 executives because it's a leadership book, and you need to find out what they think about what is the nomadic mindset, et cetera. And then he said, you need to spend time with nomads. And I went, oh, nomads. He said, yeah, nomads. I said, well, can I not just do some sort of research, anthropological research, you know, through the library and online? And he said, no. He said, you have to go and get your feet dirty, and you got to get there. Why? Because you have to have the legitimacy that you've actually been there, you've done it. And I think that has shifted my whole sense of being by doing all of that. Sure. So anyway, that's how it all started.
Yeah. So I think that's what's so telling, is through those experiences that you had combined with your own life as a global nomad, you're bringing so much wisdom to us, and this idea of leadership, what you call leadership rethink, based upon the various nomadic mindsets. And I've had the privilege of reading the book and just loved it. And there's so many golden nuggets, and we only have an hour here, but let's highlight a few of those.
Sure.
On how, because you've divided the book into basically five stages. Five passages, and then there's some golden wisdom nuggets that support those. Can you share a little bit of that?
Sure. Even I have to really preface this is not a travel book. It may be a travel of a certain metaphorical way, but it also is not about us moving from here to there. It is, as we talked about, the nomadic mindset. It's bigger than just physically moving from pasture to pasture to find new ways, you know, to move all alone. It's really bigger than that. And I think, so I decided to divide it into a journey. So that's the metaphorical level. There's a variety of levels of metaphor through this. So I think that that's also interesting. So you can open up into anything with any ideas and thoughts with it. But it's divided into a 5-part journey, which I call the 5 Ds, which is also a model now, which will become the coaching model, the training model, the speaking model, and all that. Starts out with direction. And maybe I should just bring up the share screen, okay? So I can share
Show
that
us,
with you.
yeah, so for those of us who want to see the visual of how you've, because there's got a great structure to this, so that we ourselves don't have to take, as you say, it's not about physically going, it's about mentally going and shifting perspectives. So I think it helps us to see how you've structured that journey.
So there's 2 book covers. One is a simple one, and that will be used for the ebook. And the one with the feet, and that's my feet in the sand in Mongolia. And so that will be on the paperback book. Here is the table of contents, the way it goes. And so as I was saying, the departure is divided into 3 sections, and they're stories. The first one is a beautiful story about a Moroccan tea ceremony and the magic of 3 cups of tea. And so that's really important about when relationships and developing, sharing and clarifying your departure, where you want to go. And then a little bit of history. So if you need a bit of history about where you're going, and that's a little bit about nomadic history. And then also to realize that people that you engage with will have different mindsets. And one is nomadic mindset, builder mindset, and settler mindset. And that's what I found along the journey as well, that we have all 3 living within inside of ourselves.
So even though we're not nomads, there's some of these things that are, one of the things you point out so strongly is that it's innate in us. Yeah. There's some fundamental primal things that we already know inside ourselves, but we've sort of, as you say, we've lost the plot, right?
Yeah.
We've gotten sidetracked in our busy, stressful lives. So
yeah, I mean, one of the premises for it is that the initial premise is that I feel that we have lost the plot in some ways, and we need to somehow get back on it. And one of the ways of doing that is re-looking at our nomadic history. And we are all nomads at one point. And the other point is that I feel that we're becoming very narrow in our thinking patterns. And so we need to expand, and nomads have a very beautiful, way of being very nomadic and wide and expansive in their thinking, and are able to very quickly make a decision and very narrowly. So that's something that's important there. And then in the discovery part is that I decided to divide it into 9 days. And 9 days is like a journal. So we go along, we take a little travel, something happens on this day, something happens on another day. And so I take you through a variety of qualities that exist within the nomadic mindset. So the bias is towards that. And as you can see, there are a variety of title names: embrace migration, adopt the anatomy of a bird, the power, possess the eyes of a hawk. This is also not only metaphoric, at the same time, it's exactly what nomads are experiencing, is these particular different aspects of their existence. And so I do 9 days of those, and they take us through, I say, each one is focused on specific qualities. And then at the very end is the destination. We all have a destination. And I say the destination is but a pause. And that pause is our destination before we start all the journeys over again. And I think it's important that we realize that, as we all set goals or outcomes and whichever, but it's not the end. Yeah. It is just a pause before we start again.
Right.
And I think that we tend to get locked into, well, this is the end of that.
Sure.
And that's not true. It's just the beginning of something else.
Well, and I think one of the things that you point out so much is that it for me, it was this idea of flow. There's rhythm to their lives. And again, we've sort of lost track of that rhythm and going with that rhythm. And we've tried to force it perhaps into a construct that's not there. And they're so in tune with the environment around them and nature, and it's just it's automatic for them to be in that flow. It's not just about as you say, it's not just about arriving at a specific destination, but knowing that there's something beyond that, and then another, and then another.
Absolutely, Meg.
Rhythm.
And I think that we have to realize that, and you know that we all talk about metaphors like, oh, what are the forks in the road and stuff like this, and
Right.
there is no linearity to it all.
Mm-mm.
And in fact, what the nomads taught me, that everything is very circular.
Yes.
And even that goes into when they do meetings, everything is in a circle, so that you get all of the people. And you know, you don't have tables. You sit on the floor, you stand, but everything is circular because it's about encompassing the collaboration of all.
Yeah.
And
there's so much power in that, isn't there? Just even that form. Yeah.
And it's the wisdom of the group. It's the wisdom of all. It's not just one person's wisdom. And so, you know, the destination, what you talk about there, I talk about it in the book, is that it's about the interconnectivity, is what you were talking about earlier. And I never realized how interconnected nomads are. They're connected to the universe, they're connected to the animals, they're connected to themselves, they're connected to the team, the collaboration of the clan, they're connected to anything and everything. And there is no separation. And you see that face on when you're actually spending time and just observing them. And one of the things that I think that I learned so much was the idea of observation. It's just observing them, observing nature, observing the animals, and they teach you so much, which we may have lost, and we may think, well, how do we adapt that to organizations? Well, it is observation. How often do we actually see anything within our organization? Or even within a meeting, do we actually watch people's body language, or do we actually observe the way and listen to the way they're saying things, or the words they're using? How in tune are we interconnected to that?
Right. Well, we've become sort of unplugged, and that's the irony. We feel like we're so connected and so plugged in, and yet we're walking around rather clueless. And for the nomads, one of the other things that's so powerful that you pointed out, for them, this is survival, right? Their senses are so heightened. It's just, they're in tune with everything because it's a matter of, in some instances, a matter of life and death. We don't have that. And yet, you know, there are ways that we can begin to incorporate that high observation, the rhythm, as you say. Well, I'm going to let you talk about this. Anyway, tell me some of the...
Just on that one note, what you were talking about, Meg, was that in actual fact that we do have, you know, all of that rhythm within us. I mean, we all have it. It is indigenous to us. We just may have forgotten it.
We have.
And this is a hope. This book is to help open that again. And I think that, and show that there are different ways to lead, not only externally within organizations, but lead within ourselves and with our communities.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I felt when I was reading through it was the sense of, as you said, there was somewhere inside me that kind of had this recognition, you know? Sometimes it wasn't a big aha thing, but sometimes just like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought. Somewhere there's like this distant memory within us. And then there's some things that are total surprises, but there was an awful lot of, oh yeah, there's something to that. Maybe I could pause and reconsider. And I like one of the other aspects of your book is you put in the area, you have portions in there for leadership, what you call leadership rethink, where we can process it in our own way, where we can begin to be observers, where we can begin to start paying more attention and noting our own insights. I think that's important too. That you've made it stories in a journal, but you also or about a journey, but you've also made it a journal for us as the reader on how it could be applied to our lives.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when I first started, I thought, and when I did a lot of research and I asked people, well, what type of leadership books do you want to have? And they said, well, almost everyone said to me, I do not want another how-to, the 7 steps to success as a leader.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm not going to write that. So I'm not writing this as a how-to, but in actual fact, these are hows. And but it's your journey of how you want to look at it. And that's why I think that, sure, include the pages at the very end of each chapter on a summary in some ways of the key words, which are the leadership rethink words, for you to reflect upon and then rethink, and some questions. And I think that there's a very big difference between reflect and rethink, because reflection, we can go around and do all sorts of things, but we don't actually do anything about it. And the rethink is an active. How are you going to rethink this, and how are you going to put into action?
Yeah, right.
And I mean, I know that for myself. I can reflect for days, but never do anything about it.
Yeah, then you got to say, so what? I mean, this is a profound idea, but what does it mean for me? Bringing it home to each of us on how can this make a difference in our lives? What can we apply? Or even will it make a difference? And I think it's also one of those things you can return to. I wanted to get back on, when we started our conversation talking about some of the nuggets that you have in the book, and there's so many powerful quotes, but could you highlight for us a few of your favorites?
Sure, I will. Just let me do one.
Sure.
Just back this up and finish. And so the part 5 is distillation. And basically that's what we do is it's about what was this all about? What are the things to remember? So it's like a debrief in some ways. But I just wanted to share with you some of the design just before we go on to that. And
absolutely.
that is that, I said, okay, I just do a book, that's just black and white. And people said to me, no, you've got so many beautiful pictures. Put some pictures in it. Make it colorful. Make it an experience for us. And so that's what I said, okay, I'll bite the bullet. And that's what I decided to do. And I'm very proud of it. And I just want to show you a little bit about
please do. They're gorgeous.
Yeah. So here you see, this is part 2 is departure. This is what it looks like, the first page with a picture, and then a little bit about what the departure is about. And then the first section is indulge. And so it tells you a little bit more, the first page, and then it goes into the chapter, which is a lot story. So many stories. Each chapter starts with a story. And then it takes us through that into how I interconnected everything with executive case studies and executives conversations that I had. So it's a linkage. And that was hard to do, I have to say. It was a nightmare. I was thinking, how do I put the two together, which are like at the opposite ends of the spectrum in many ways.
But then you found out that they weren't really at the opposite ends of the spectrum. That's the interesting thing, is that at first glance, they look so disconnected, but they're not. As you say, they're interconnected. And you did a beautiful job of that. So
And then the end of each day or each section, there is this page, which is the leadership rethink. And at the end of every 3 sections or days, whichever, there is extra pages you can write in, which are called the rethink pages. So I just added extra pages for you to play with and jot down some of your thoughts or rethinks. So it's a journey again into itself.
It is, yeah.
So now you talked about some of the nuggets, and these all come with stories, and they're brilliant nuggets. And so just so you know, I'll share a little story, is that I was in Mongolia in the Blue Sky Lounge, hotel lounge, and I was sitting with 6 Mongolian nomads, but actually urban nomads. And one of them, her name is Bakarel Bat, and she was maybe still is, the head of the National Branding Council of Mongolia. And she said to me, I asked her, what is the meaning of nomad? And she said, most people believe it to be moving from place to find new pastures, which is a dictionary meaning. But she says, no, it's not that at all. It's the movement of the mind. And the movement of the mind, isn't that beautiful?
It is. It is so powerful too.
And it really conjures up, I keep thinking, I see all these nomads walking around in my head, moving from idea to idea, from creativity to creative, conversation to conversation. But it's that movement.
Yes.
Because I started to think, well, what does movement mean? And movement is, I realize that we're never not moving. And we talk about, we need to stop. But we never stop, because we cannot stop, because even our breathing is still moving. Our physical being is still never, we may become silent but we're still moving. So this nomad is constantly moving. This is the mindset, keeping everything moving, pausing, moving, pausing, moving, pausing, exactly how they do with migration.
Yeah. Again, it's that rhythm. And when I first read that, there were a couple of things that came up for me, is that not just keeping a busy mind. There's a distinction between what they are considering this movement of the mind, which is, as you say, there's stillness, there's pause, there's a different rhythm. Whereas some of us can get ourselves spinning. Yeah, that's a different kind of movement. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, just like
absolutely
spinning with the same problem over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you point out Einstein's great quote about, you know, the mind that created the problem is not the mind that solves it. So,
yeah,
you know, we can get busy doing this. What they have as movement of the mind is a completely different orientation. It taps into imagination, taps into wisdom, taps into, as you said earlier, the communal knowledge and contributions of the group. There's so many other aspects to it.
Yeah, I love the way you say that, because that's really true. And I think that if we take that into the contemporary condition that we are in Industry 4.0, what you're saying is absolutely vital. Is that it adapts into innovation, adapts into creativity, different negotiation tactics and strategies, and it's completely. You know, the point here is that you talked about survival, and the nomads realized from a very early stage that they have to keep moving because it is about survival. And I don't mean from place to place, but for example, moving, they cannot say, I'm not getting up to milk the cow this morning, because what that means, if there's no cow milk, there's nothing for the children to survive upon. Right. So everything is linked to that line of survival. Now, if we take our contemporary life backwards a little bit, why do we work? Why do we have a house of work? It is survival.
Yeah,
we take it to the baseline, which is survival, as you know, that is told a lot with a lot of contemporaries. But we're into what we call thriving, which is a very positive word. But I think that the movement of the mind is about thriving. The movement of the mind is about surviving. And I think that we cannot disconnect from one or the other and just say it's about thriving. No, we have to realize the hard truth. As a Maasai warrior told me, is that when you are fighting a lion, you have to know the hard truth. It is facing you. It's life or death. And it may not be today that we're fighting those types of lions, but we are fighting lions, or we're seeing lions, or we're experiencing lions, even in our head.
Yes.
So it is that hard truth we have to have with us, and that keeps that movement of the mind happening, is realizing that.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers of depth to that one, aren't there?
Very layered.
Yeah, well, it is. And I think that's one of the powers of what you've written, is that it's one of these things that you can keep coming back to and revisiting and looking at it with fresh eyes and seeing it in a different way each time. Yeah. So
let's go on to the next one.
What else?
So the next one, here is a wonderful one, which I met a student in Mongolia. She was about 22 years old. She said, I want to talk to you about your book. And we had a conversation, we sat and had coffee, and she was completely lamenting for the expansiveness of the Mongolian steppes and the beautiful, graceful rolling of the Gobi Desert. And she said, this is where freedom is. This is where you are open to possibilities. This is where you have to be you need to adapt, and you need to be agile and flexible. She says, this is the vastness. And then she said to me that she really felt that she was she'd lost touch with her nomadic nature, and she being an urbanite, and she really wanted it back. And all of a sudden she came out and she said, nomads think vastly, act narrowly. And I went, it's like,
that's a quote.
It's a quote. But at the same time, she said, I asked her, well, what does that mean to nomads? And she said, Absolutely. They think with a complete vastness. They think of this, they see the expansion. They see all of the possibilities that are there. They sense all of the creative ideas. They take in all the different suggestions. And then they act narrowly by bringing it all together. And I think that this is something very beautiful for us in contemporary life, is that we must expand our thinking before we go narrow. For example, I look at people when I walk around offices and things, and everybody's like chunked down into their computer,
Yes.
so very narrow in there in that computer.
That's right.
And we don't get to this, well, what's the big picture of today? What's the big picture? And I don't mean just sort of, again, looking at the computer and looking at your agenda. No, it's about physically mapping, by seeing the big map, by physically drawing it out, or physically having, you know, something. And I think that is something that we miss, is that playfulness of being able to stand back and go, vastness. Now I can look at this and go narrow.
Yeah. But even the movement that you just did, this idea of expanding of ourselves, stepping back, looking at the horizon, you know, imagining that whole desert or those steps are in front of you. The mountain range is all there, right?
Yeah.
Taking it all in.
Yeah.
And considering possibilities. And again, we get so busy, we forget to do that.
My suggestion is, you know, for a benefit for all of us, is that before we start anything, is to go wide before we start, you know, going into that computer or into that project and just going, oh no, this is what I got to do. Oh no, I have to do my social media now. Oh, I have to have this meeting, you know, it's a very structured meeting. Oh.
Pause. Yeah. This word keeps coming up for me today, is this rhythm. Their rhythm is different than ours. Even those that you met who were urbanized, you know, the urbanites, as they call themselves, their rhythm is different, even within the urban environment. We can learn a lot from that. Yeah.
And it's very interesting, because when I was in Mongolia, I have to say that I spent a lot of time with the urbanite Mongolians. And they may have said that they have lost their connection with nomadic qualities, but they are much closer to it than we are.
Yes.
And I can sense that they're very much closer to it. They're not that far removed in the way they think about, the way they make decisions, the way they don't have fear. You know, again, for example, in the same meeting that at the Blue Sky Hotel, I asked the question, well, how do you deal with fear? You know, like a first world question, right?
Yeah.
And one of them said, well, we don't do fear.
Right. I love that line.
As simple as that. We don't do fear.
We don't do
and I'm going, what?
I know. It's like, how is that possible?
And they said, well, if it suddenly doesn't work, we just move on to something else.
Yeah, that one I'm still trying to get my head around, because I think fear just impacts us in so many ways that keep us from moving forward.
Yeah.
So what did they say about that? How do we get to that place?
Well, if something is not working and we're afraid of moving on, we just find something new. So they lose a job, for example, and so we would congest our minds and think, oh my God, what's going to happen next, and whatever. They would just say, well, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
They don't go to the fear first, they go to what's next.
Right. Again, it gets back to this thinking vastly. What are the possibilities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's cool. Now let's move on to the next one.
What's the next one?
So the next one is, it's beautiful. I love this one.
Yeah.
I have to say that I'll just share a little story, and is that how it came about was, I was at the Amara Simba Lodge in the Masai Mara in southern Kenya, and I'm overlooking the vastness again of the beautiful Masai Mara, the Mara just stretching out in front of me. And then all of a sudden I was interrupted by my Benson. Now Benson is an amazing fellow. And Benson, I met him, he's now a waiter, and he was a Maasai warrior. And he went through the whole initiations. And so I was so fascinated by sitting down and chatting with him. And he said to me, I asked first world questions again, like, right, how do you deal with leadership? What is leadership to you? How do you build trust? How do you deal with change? All these first things. And they all kind of looked at me as like, it's like, why do you have to make this conversation? And it's like, we just deal with it. We just do it. Yeah. And it's just normal. So I thought, wow, this is cool. But anyway, he came up and he says, we are migrating. where we were is not where we are. We are evolving. This piece of wisdom came out of his mouth, but I thought, again, I went, ding, another piece. But we don't like the word migrating because it has this particular bad connotation today about people moving from one place to place, and we put borders up so that we stop migration. Well, let's just expand that, from what I just said before. Movement of the mind, think fastly, act narrowly. Now we're migrating. We're migrating in this mind. We're migrating from idea to idea, from thought to thought. We are migrating physically as well. And I asked him about their culture, the Maasai, and he says, we're getting educated. He said, that's how we're migrating. We're learning now. And I went to school. I'm one of 20 children, and I'm the only one that went to school. And I said, well, how many children do you have? And he says, 2. And I said, how many wives do you have? And he said, 1, because we can't afford it anymore.
Yeah.
And he said, but I want my children to go to school. And so that was very beautiful. I have to say that my other Maasai brother, his father was the elder of the Manyata and the clan, and he has 6 wives, 36 children.
Oh my gosh.
And he was 82, and he had 1 wife with a child ready to be born.
Oh.
And I said, oh.
That'll keep him busy.
Exactly. But anyway, I thought, okay, that's very strong. He could barely move, but anyway, that's another thought I didn't want to go into. But migration, then I asked him about how do animals migrate, and why do my animals migrate? Because I was quite curious, is there a relationship between migration of animals, the reason, and us as human beings, not why we migrate, but why, that into our mind is, why do we migrate? And he said there's 2 main reasons that they migrate. One is to find a new pasture, because they will starve in the seasonal change if they do not migrate. And they have to migrate to get more food, which is in the next pasture or land mass or whichever. And so they do it for food, and also they do it because the evolution of change is happening, seasonal change. And so they're all connected to the seasons, they're connected to the universe, all of this. But he said the second thing is that they give birth. And I thought, we migrate to give birth. Yeah. So if we think about that, we migrate in our mind to give birth to new ideas, new thoughts, new ways of communicating, new conversations. We give birth. This is a newness.
Yes.
How can we take that into our leadership today to think that we're having conversations, that we're migrating our employees, we're migrating all of these people, not just to positions, but inside of them.
Yeah.
And
we're I think ideally we talk about people growing, learning and growing. We want to foster growth in the people in our organizations. And yet if our mindset doesn't support that, then they can remain stagnant. You see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it comes from, the nomadic mindset. And that's why, I'll just briefly say that what you're just talking about is that I found that the 3 mindsets, nomadic, builder, and settler, all of the executives defined the qualities that represent those typologies.
Right.
And that we all have them, and we may act upon them indifferently in different areas of our life. But we have a dominance of one more than another.
Sure.
And what you were just saying, in actual fact, is more, we get settled. And we get settled in that mind. Yeah. And we don't reach out to migrate to new thoughts because it might be too difficult, or it might be to cause a bit more stress perhaps, or it might be a challenge, or but as you say, we're all about growth. And that's what these nomads are seeing, that it's about growth. Yeah. Even if it's not complex growth that we talk about, but it's growth in its basic form.
Well, it's what the end of this quote here, we are evolving. And if we understand that there's supposed to be evolution and combine that with some of the things you mentioned earlier about just trusting that it's all going to be okay. And we don't do fear.
Exactly.
That's what can keep us gripped so often and keep us stuck.
Yeah.
So if we're not doing fear, if we have trust, if we are in that rhythm and flow, then there's logically going to be creativity, imagination, and evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds fun. I have to say, I confess that there are some elements of me that's like, oh, that's kind of scary, because it's a different way of approaching it. And yet at the same time, in its simplicity, there's some real beauty there, some real beauty. And because we do like to complicate things in the human mind, don't we? And so one of the other things that I think you've done is particularly in these quotes, is you've gotten it down to this distilling of its essence and boiling it down to keeping it simple. I love that.
Yeah. And that's exactly how they work. I mean, as I think I mentioned to you in one of our conversations, that one of the Maasai that I had a conversation with, he said, the Westerners, their minds are too congested. And I went, congested? What's that word?
Yes.
And so I looked it up, and the word that I took from the definition is blocked.
Yeah.
Is we put borders around ourselves. We put too much stuff in there that we get blocked.
Yeah.
And I have a wonderful colleague in Singapore, Ritu, and she has written a book just recently called Leadership Block. And so that's also a wonderful thought, is, this is what happens in our congested minds.
Yeah.
And if we could migrate to simplicity to keep the evolution happening.
Right.
And so that's cool. Yeah. And then, so the last
clearing out, I'm just going to clear out some of that congestion that I've got in my mind. Yeah. Go
exactly.
ahead. Yeah. Next one.
So the last one is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yes, brilliant.
Which I think is a very beautiful, if you look at nomadic tribes, what they do is, if they're going out on caravan, or if they're going to migrate to another part of the country or to wherever it might be, they send out people generally as their lookers, they're warriors, they're fastest, to find out what's the safety of the road, what's happening out there, what are, and if our thoughts here are trends, what's happening. But we send those people that are keen and robust to look, and then they come back and they report to the elders, and the elders then, thinking vastly, acting narrowly, now we go, and this is the direction we will go. And then everyone goes far together.
Yeah.
And it's because it's safety. If you go individually, it's more risky. True. If you go together, here today we're talking about our independence and just being our own. And yes, nomads are very independent, but they're very reliant and interdependent. And so they realize the two, again, are interconnected.
Well, and you also get the collective wisdom that you've talked about. That circle that you were talking about earlier. You've got this circle of wisdom of people sharing and contributing, and it's through that collaborative effort that you can take it even further than the one person. I mean, that's how I read that quote too.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, as far as teams are concerned in organizations, if we want to go forward, we have to go together. And that is where I know that you get all of the, sometimes disconnect within teams or within groups and whichever. They do also have the same in nomads. That they may decide, I don't want to go this direction. I want to go another direction. And I want to do that. So what they do, and I ask the question, well, what happens if that happens?
Yeah.
And they say, well, the elder will say, you go in that direction and you do what you have to do, and we'll all come back and celebrate.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So they don't stop it, but they want the curiosity of what that might bring by celebrating, coming back and saying, but we found this in that new land that you might not have. So it's an openness to those things.
Mm-hmm. And finding the balance between the wisdom of the elder and allowing some of that the fresh ideas as well. That's a challenge, I think, for many leaders. It's a challenge.
Oh, well, I think you're absolutely right. It's a challenge. And I think that is, I think this just brings a lot more of that humanity into it.
Yeah.
And I think that to sort of end this a little bit in these, is that out of all of the executives that I have chatted with, and I asked them, what is the mindset that you feel that you need more in your organization as you move forward into Industry 4.0? And they all said 100% nomadic.
Hmm.
So there is something in that, but they just don't know how to go about it. And so that's what this is all about, is a way
That's
to move
great.
forward. And so that's cool.
Really cool. Thank you. So you mentioned about the education. So can you just say a few words about your philanthropic endeavors with this book? Because I think that's an important piece as well.
Thanks, Meg. So when I was in the Maasai land, they really want to have education. So I decided, okay, for me to give back, my first start to give back for the Maasai people and the nomadic people, to give me interviews and to spend time with me and to share, was that I would sponsor their children in education. And I sponsored one child from Joel, my Maasai brother, that was my main connection. And then this year I've sponsored two other children, one in preschool, which is Benson's child, and one of his nieces, because I very much want to sponsor females as well, not just the males. And so proceeds of this book and proceeds of my work that I do from now on will go to sponsoring education for children. And I want to, in the next 5 years, get at least to my own personal sponsoring of at least 100 children.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I need a lot of work to be able to do that.
We're going to sell a lot of books. So speaking, that leads us to if you can put back up the slide.
Sure.
Slides, and put up the slide for anybody who wants to reach out and contact you. There's an email, and that there on the. I'll go back into that. The thank you. How do you say that again?
Okay, so this is Ashe Aleng, which is in Ma language means thank you very much. This is, of course, this picture is not in Maasai. This is in Morocco. And this is a lovely little boy of Mohammed that was so sweet when we were having our conversations and our tea ceremony.
Okay, so the slide that has your contact details and the information about the book launch, which, as I said, is in pre-sale now, and or on the 28th. So everybody get on and purchase it on the 28th. It's out there. Spread the word and spread the nomadic mindset. And it's been a real pleasure, Kevin, being with you today and with all of you. Thank you all for joining us. And we wish you happy migrating, happy evolution, happy vastly thinking, all the rest. It's been wonderful. There's so many great things that you've contributed for us, Kevin. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
For that.
Thank you, Meg, for doing this interview. I mean, this was I have to say I was paranoid of being able to do one of these things. It was my first time. And actually, thanks for the technology gods to keep all of the energy in the room so therefore it was meant to be. So it didn't get interrupted.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank all of you very much for being here and just spending the time and also to go nomading. I mean, that's what I say, just go nomading and just do it. One of the things that I did first say is that I've gone mad in many ways. And I said, yes, mad, no mad, just completely mad. And I think that's exactly what's happened.
That's great. So we can all be just completely mad together. It's wonderful.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
All right.